Hello, and welcome to the Soul Elevation Podcast, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and today is April 28th, Monday, April 28th. For those of you who may be listening to the recording, I do share these YouTube lives on the audio podcast, but they come out a little bit delayed. So I'm going to try to remember to state when I'm actually recording it because sometimes it's relevant to the timing of what I'm talking about. Sometimes we talk about like more of an astrological, kind of what's happening in the current field, and it can be helpful to know when it was recorded. So I'll try to remember to do that from now on. This topic is not so much in that vein. It doesn't really matter when I'm recording this. I want to talk about conspiracies and spiritual awakening. And I want to first discuss that there are various levels to spiritual awakening. People come to spiritual awakening through different means of their life. Some people, I feel like this is more rare, but they are, spiritual beings from a very early age. From as long as they've known, they recognize that they're spirit. They have never really bought into the mainstream. They've never parted from that. Some people, like myself, I felt very spiritually connected organically, not really from a religious standpoint. I didn't particularly grow up in a religious household. We went to church sometimes, but we weren't big into church. But I felt curious about God, connected to God. And then when I was kind of a young adult, I became agnostic. I let that side of my life kind of flounder, didn't feed it. And then it came back around when I really kind of my life fell apart. And I think that that's for a lot of people, there is a big trauma that happens, or there's a big kind of low point in their lives, and they desperately need to hold on to something. And that is where their spirituality comes to the forefront. For other people, it may be that they have a health issue that they're unable to resolve, and they realize that the culture that they're in, the medical system, that it's not helping them, and so they start exploring other options. They find alternative medicine, and then that kind of opens up a whole door for them, and they start to see reality in a different way. They start to understand the role of energy and so forth, and that leads to a bigger awakening for them. Some people come to spiritual awakening through conspiracies, and that's what I want to focus on today. So, conspiracies can be a really kind of tricky subject because, for one thing, when you dive into the world of conspiracies, very much of it is entangled in mental illness in terms of, it's so far, you go so far in the other direction of where mainstream society is led, and the reality that we are presented with in mainstream society that is a product of the media, that's a product of our education system, that's, we it's kind of like what the masses, what we've all kind of worked together to create, perhaps with influence. That that's part of the conspiracy. Is there a group, or some very very few people, or maybe even other beings, who have constructed reality in a way that makes the masses, through mind control, through our own malleability and our own weakness of mind, that enables us to feed somebody else's agenda. And that's kind of the root of conspiracy, and that there are all these different ways that humanity is being manipulated, and it benefits this top tier, kind of faceless, very few elite people. And then there are all kinds of conspiracies. They go into, mind control with the government, mind control through Hollywood, and rituals, child abuse, child trafficking, I mean, atrocities. Um, of course, we have ET cover-ups in terms of, there's intelligent life beyond this earth, and and it's hidden. And if you believe it, you're crazy. And I think we've all noticed very, very recently that there's been a big pivot on that in particular in terms of the ET exposure. That's a lot of stuff. This is the interesting thing with conspiracies. A lot of the things that there are calculated efforts to make people look crazy when they believe these conspiracies. The media makes them look crazy, and then people who idolize the media or believe anything that the media tells them, then they adopt that, and they, throw stones at people who have different ways of that they accept different sources than the traditional media. And they make them look crazy. And this has happened for a really long time, and it's been a very calculated effort. So there's the whole, one way to look at conspiracies is, are people crazy when they believe conspiracies? And I think that it's only the people who are very locked into mainstream society and who don't allow themselves to expand themselves and be open, who hold that view of, oh, I'm not even going to listen to somebody who talks about conspiracies because they're just crazy. They've gone off the deep end, but they've done nothing to open themselves up to the sources, to the whistleblowers, to what's actually happening. They haven't allowed themselves to consider the people who would benefit from these outlandish stories. If they were true, who would benefit from them? And how do I play into believing them? I mean, that's another thing with conspiracies. A lot of them are so outlandish that it seems preposterous. Like, why would anybody do that? Why would we believe this? And then you have the media kind of mocking it and playing into that. And then if we don't go any further into the surface and we just say, oh, well, this big government organization or this big media organization has discredited it and just said it's unfounded. Okay, that's all I need to know. I'm just going to take their word for it. And the thing with conspiracies is that especially in this internet age, there's a lot of information out there. And so if you do dig, what you will find is that there are a lot of really credible sources for these claims. So it does seem to me that there is a lot of accuracy with a lot of these really crazy conspiracies. But aside from that, what role does it play in spiritual awakening? Because if we were to accept, okay, there are all these conspiracies out there, they're hidden, they're like under the surface of what we accept in the mainstream, what the masses accept. They're denied, they're hidden, and you have to do your research to be able to get to the real truth of what's going on. So that can be an awakening for people because they have gone through their lives and they've just accepted what's been presented to them, because why wouldn't you? I mean, we're all like, that's just, you live in the society that you live in. You trust what's being presented to you, and something might start to chip away at that. And you may start to realize, wait a minute, if this isn't true, if this conspiracy is true, what else have I been lied to about? And this is when you start going down rabbit holes. And this can be the trap of conspiracies. And this is what you want to really be honest with yourself about with conspiracies, because you can spend a lot of time going down rabbit holes and uncovering truths, but you can get trapped. And it can be that because you're uncovering all of these secrets, you feel that you're waking up, but you're only waking up to a certain level. And you're actually, and it can be an important step for people. Some people don't go into this. Some people just, their spiritual work does not take them there. And that's okay. We all have legitimate paths to awakening. But I do also see value in the conspiracy one, but it is one that we need to be careful with. We need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to use our intuition to recognize what the uncovering of these things are, what they're doing to us. How do we feel as we keep going down these rabbit holes? And I can only speak for myself, but I think that this is also a pretty normal thing. When I start going into them, it's like part of me wants to see it and part of me doesn't, um, because of the way it makes me feel. Because it can be easy to go down these rabbit holes and see that there is this huge architecture that mainstream society has been built on that is deceiving us, and it is siphoning from us, and it is not for our highest good. It is keeping us from our spiritual connection. It is keeping us from our sovereignty, from our own liberation. And that is a disempowering place to be. So when we continue to go rabbit hole to rabbit hole, and this way that I'm being, they're putting this in my water, they're emitting this frequency, they're they're siphoning from, because of this big entertainment that we're all buying into. And that can feel disempowering. And it is disempowering to a certain extent if we let ourselves only go as far as that awakening. So it's important for us to recognize when we've had enough of it and when it has stopped serving a positive purpose. And it's a delicate dance. It's different for everybody. But what can happen is we can it can be very addicting. And again, we have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to things like addictions, because we can get very defensive and tell ourselves, this is for my best good. I'm getting a lot out of this. I need to uncover this, and I need to let everybody know. And that's where we need to pull back, and we need to see, is this actually serving my highest good? Because actually, in some cases, there may be some truth to a conspiracy, but it may not be the whole truth. And even the conspiracy itself can be used as a way to siphon your attention and your energy so that you buy into that agenda, you buy into that reality, and you're giving that reality your attention, because our attention and our energy is the currency in spiritual war, if you want to think of it that way. What they want is your attention, what they benefit from, whoever's behind this. If we think, what could they benefit from? Why would they do this? They siphon energy. It's food. I mean, they need it to exist, to have the power. They don't generate their own. And that may not make sense, but it is the truth. So it's important that you recognize, what is it that you actually want? What is it? What's behind wanting to know the truth that's at the core of conspiracies? And I would argue that what we actually want is liberation. Through conspiracies, we recognize that we are not actually free, that we are enmeshed in a matrix, in an energetic structure that is false, that through our participation in the masses, we are feeding and keeping that alive just because we're unaware. And we're giving consent to the structure of this inverted energy matrix because we don't recognize that it's happening. So we're participating, we're giving consent because we don't have full view into what it is we're participating in. So really what we want is liberation. We want sovereignty. We want to be free. And to do that, we need to connect with ourselves. We need to connect with God. We need to connect with a different energetic structure, a different matrix. And it is out there. There is a higher vibrational energetic matrix, but it requires us to choose to connect with it, to choose to be aligned with ourselves, to come back to ourselves, to come back to our own higher selves, our own divinity, to nurture that. And we can't be locked into that lower vibration that we get into when we feel disempowered and be connected to that. The more of us who get into our power, truly, truly get into our power, release ourselves from all of these agendas, and say, regardless of what is happening in the realm in which my spirit is residing in this incarnation, I choose to be liberated. I choose sovereignty. That is my right as a divine being, as an eternal being. That is my right and my choice. And so I disconnect from any unwilling, unknowing contracts, anything I've entered into unwillingly and unknowingly that is feeding an inverted agenda, an inverted energy matrix. I withdraw from immediately, completely, across time and space. Okay, that is where we need to be. And so that also means that we are diligent with ourselves. We recognize we have the discipline to say, okay, there are other agendas out there. There's some gnarly stuff going on out there. I am not afraid to look at it, but I will not get myself entangled in it. You know, it's we all have different missions. We all have different things that we're here to do. Sorry, I need to do one thing real quick or I'm going to lose power. Oh, why is this not? Sorry, my power is not. Oh, there. Okay, sorry, I wasn't. And it was like, you're gonna hold on. Oh, goodness gracious. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm getting all these alerts on my computer. Sorry about that. So the bottom line is that we have all of these different ways that our attention, our energy, it can suit somebody else's agenda. And so we need to be right within ourselves to know how we want to exist and how we want our energy utilized. And that is, we want to come from that place, from a place of power, owning our own power. The more of us who do this, the easier it is for others. So don't feel that your mission is to go as deep into conspiracies as you can and spread it. Because you can get, and it's very, very easy to get addicted to it. Honestly, it is like a drug. And so we need to notice when we've just jumped from the mainstream matrix to a conspiracy matrix. And when we're just getting off on learning these new, like, nefarious things that are going on. And again, if it might feel like we might tell ourselves that we're actually doing something that's helpful, And we need to notice when we've kind of tipped into this is actually not good for me. This is actually going against what I'm trying to do. There are people with different missions. There are whistleblowers out there. There are people who have access, who have the ability to change something. So there might be conspiracies out there. There might be whistleblowers out there who are saying, I know for a fact this is what's happening, and I'm willing to put my neck on the line. And God bless those people who are doing that. But if your role is simply as a consumer, simply consuming conspiracy after conspiracy, notice that. Be honest with yourself about the power that you have to actually affect change. Is this a form of entertainment for you? Are you just feeling that you're educating yourself, but you don't actually have power to do anything? Then keep yourself updated a little bit, but avoid handing yourself over, avoid getting into a different type of trap, because it can be a very sneaky trap because you think that you're awakening. There is further awakening. If you're in an awakening process and you're at the conspiracy level or the conspiracy layer, good, that's awesome that you got that far. A lot of people have not gotten that far, but it's not the final level or layer of awakening. It's not true liberation. You have to keep going. You have to keep stepping into your power. There is more for you to discover. There's more illusion to move through. So I hope that this is helpful, and I bless you. I bless you on your path, on your mission, on your awakening. May it be full of sovereignty and delight and beauty and blessings. And I